So, Fallout New Vegas has a lot of weapons. Truth be told, most of them I've never used. I'm sort of a one-track mind kind of guy. I see a big bludgeoning stick, and that's usually good enough for me for an entire playthrough. One such weapon I would never have even considered picking up and firing in someone's general direction is that of the flare gun found in the Lonesome Road DLC. Normally, they aren't used for combat, but for calling for help, something I felt like doing multiple times throughout this video, I might add. So, I suppose with that in mind, today we find out, can you beat Fallout New Vegas with only the flare gun? You take one look at the weapon stats, and you can already tell this is not going to be a fun time. It has a slow fire rate, can only fire one projectile before needing to reload, and on top of that, each projectile costs 10 pieces of flamer fuel, so we will quite literally be burning through ammo. Well, I cannot wait to get started, so with all that out of the way, let's begin. Pokemon appropriate name aside, and I didn't really put a lot of thought into what my build should be. In the end, I just figured that you can't go wrong with high intelligence for more skill points. Not to jump the gun here, but the correct option would have been to spec entirely into a luck build for the extra crit chance, as it would have made all the difference in the world. For tag skills, I went with energy weapons, explosives, and sneak. Energy weapons, as that's what the flare gun is classed under. Explosives, so I don't have to put as many points into it upon leveling, as I want it to be at least 60 before level 12 so I can take the Pyromaniac perk for the added 50% damage with fire-based weapons. As for sneak, well, it was initially down to the fact that it is considered an advanced holdout weapon, so with it at 50, I could sneak it into the casinos. But in the end, that didn't really mean anything when you consider how things usually transpire for me in Vegas. Finally for traits, I took Skilled and, for the hell of it, Wild Wasteland. They are kind of just my go-to traits if I cannot think of anything else. I raid Doc Mitchell's house for any and all supplies I can find, and then use them to get enough caps to buy leather armor from Chet before beginning the short jog to the entrance to the Divide just outside of Prim. Into the room where we find Eddie, and this little guy will literally be the only reason this run is viable, even if he doesn't quite know it yet. The good thing about Lonesome Road is that the game expects you to come here when you're around level 25, and as such, there's a lot of expensive objects just lying around, waiting to be sold to the nearby commissary machine, such as this arc welder and the H&H Tools nail gun, which, frankly, is worth a hell of a lot more than I would have thought. I used the money to just purchase stimpaks for now, as with no way to defend myself for the time being, I will need to counter the high level opponents I'm about to face somehow. Speaking of, this may be somewhat controversial as it's somewhat of an unwritten rule in these runs not to bring along companions, but considering the flare gun can only be found in the DLC and you need to have Eddie accompany you throughout, my hands are basically tied. All of the locked doors and terminals in the area offer enough experience for me to level up and take the rapid reload perk, something that is almost mandatory should I not want to rip my hair out going forward. You may think that the first real hurdle here would be getting past the sentry bot, what with Eddie's entirely gung-ho nature. I thought so too, but this can be easily avoided by rounding the head first into the room and activating the console before Eddie has a chance to tap into his inner Palpatine and attempt to fry the robot. Doing so will cause him to ignore it and open the way for you without many issues. I say without many because I still need to skip through a small horde of angry sentry bots and turrets that would very much like to see me added to the bodies of the marked men covering the floors. Turns out this wasn't so bad either. Yes, I have to take a few stimpaks, but I made a slight detour into one of the nearby rooms and grabbed myself a set of US Army combat armor from a locker that offered a significant boost in protection when compared to that of the leather armor. This increase in defense was more than enough for me to slip past the turrets to the outdoors and begin my Metal Gear long dialogue exchange with Ulysses. Once we are free to explore, things become tedious. I, of course, can still not attack the marked men until I find a flare gun, so for the time I have to rely on Eddie to do all of the killing for me. Frankly, that sounds a lot worse than it is. Eddie is more than able to hold his own against the marked men, so long as they don't have melee weapons anyway. It seems like any of them with guns just seem to aim either too high or low, and never manage to actually focus on the flying ball of death slowly zapping away what's left of their life force in front of them. We got into a few sticky situations when indoors due to the whole melee weapons thing, but let's not pretend that I'm not going to use some of the game's glitches / features to my advantage. If Eddie were to ever fall in combat, I would simply just locate the nearest door and load into the next area. Doing so would bring him back with full health, and then I could just repeat this process until the enemies in the area were dead. Oh, and in doing this I got a lot of armor and weapons from the marked men, so I traded them in for more stimpaks and a set of riot gear. It's not that much better than the US combat armor, but it damn sure looks a lot cooler. Grabbing the laser detonator is required to get through to the area with the first flare gun. Unlike before, there weren't any convenient doors nearby, so I just had to sprint on in and use my hotkeyed stimpaks to damage boost through the onslaught to the detonator. Miraculously, this works and doesn't waste the majority of my supplies, allowing me to push on to the final few marked men I should have to deal with today. Eddie may have been outnumbered, but once again, anyone using a ranged weapon was just absolutely hopeless when it came to landing a hit. Eventually, one of the marked man's scouts approached with an arc welder. I have no idea if he was actually hitting him, but either way, Eddie just ignored the electricity and gave him a taste of his own medicine. Once this marked man dropped, I searched him like I did all the others, and lo and behold, I finally found one with a flare gun, and now things can begin to get underway. I tested the thing out right away on one of the nearby survivors, and yeah, it was about as terrible as I could have hoped. Wonderful. I think I may have gotten the kill, but it's honestly hard to tell. New Vegas gives you experience when your followers kill people regardless of whether you've attacked them or not. Anyway, it's time for me to leave the Divide, at least for now, and I am returning to the Mojave with 271 rounds of flamer fuel, which translates to about 27 shots with a flare gun, so not exactly great. To get an idea for what we're working with, I figured there was no better way to test it out than by taking part in the Ghost Town gunfight quest, as by all rights, it is technically the ending to the tutorial. I do my usual song and dance of recruiting everyone to the cause, even Easy Pete this time, before setting off to signal for help directly into the eyeballs of the incoming powder gangers. I learned a few very important aspects of the gun during this encounter. The flare seems to have a blast radius to some degree, as once you hit someone with it, it is likely that anyone standing close enough may also get set on fire. This could come in handy for taking down multiple enemies if they get grouped up. If for no other reason, it'll save ammo. I also realised that not only does the gun seem to do more damage in VATS by the looks of things, but it's also the only reliable way to hit someone most of the time. I know I'm not the best at aiming in New Vegas. Again, I chalk that up to the fact when I am playing this casually, I rarely, if ever, touch the game's firearms. But I counted multiple times throughout the run where I swear the flare just passed straight through someone's torso like they just ceased to exist for a few brief seconds. Clearly, this is going to be more of a hassle than I'd thought. At the very least, Ringo the Ghost Rider gives me my reward, and now that I am down to just 3 shots, I would need to find myself a reliable source of ammo, preferably something I can rely on for the rest of the run if it can be helped. While ammo is important, we also need to try our best to get as much damage as physically possible out of each and every shot of the flare gun. To that end, I would like to level up as soon as possible and reach level 6 so that I can take the Vigilant Recycler perk. This perk does a few things, but most importantly for us, it unlocks optimized flamer fuel workbenches which do more damage and have a higher armor penetration rate than that of normal flamer fuel. Given that I currently have no ammo, I would need to gain experience some other way. Initially, I just thought about marking a few locations on the map, as well as helping fix Snuffles in the generator at Sloan. I am rather impatient however, plus this is being recorded a few days before Christmas, and I am a little short on time. So I decided if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Or, I suppose in this case, if it is broke, abuse it, as I scale the side of Black Mountain to open a door through a fence so I may reach the top of the tower within seconds and then put my science skill to work as I repair Rhonda and finish the quest without having to attack anyone and in record time. Sure enough, this pushes me to level 6, I take the perk, and now I just need to see about getting ammo. I should probably have mentioned you still need 3 flamer fuel to make 1 round of optimized flamer fuel, so I still need to find a source of the original stuff. My best guess is the Silver Rush, as the flamer is classified as an energy weapon, and that is their entire shtick after all. Long story short, I checked the Silver Rush, along with the Gunrunners and Mick and Ralphs, and none of them had a great supply of fuel that would be able to consistently keep me topped up for the rest of the run. The Silver Rush did sell flamer fuel, but it was rarely in high enough quantities for it to be viable in the long term. Things were starting to look dire, but remember how I mentioned Eddie would be crucial to the run? Well, I didn't just mean forgetting the flare gun itself. The little robot can craft you 35 flamer fuel per day if you pass a skill check with him, which may not sound like a lot, but it's the best we've got, so it's back to the Divide, and time to get tedious. Eddie can also act as a workbench, so while I'm here for a long time crafting flamer fuel, I can at the very least also turn them into optimized fuel right away, so I don't need to run back and forward. I did this for 32 minutes. That sounds like a really long time when you consider all I was doing was opening a dialogue menu, selecting an option, and then waiting 24 hours and nothing else. Thing is, when I was finally finished and converted all the ammo, it totaled out at 1,334 optimized rounds of flamer fuel. Or in other words, only 133 shots. Considering the gun's lackluster damage output, I feel like I'll be making frequent trips back here throughout the run. If anybody is curious about how much in-game time has passed, well, when I entered the Divide it was November 1st, and by the time I left it was Christmas Eve. So my guy literally stood completely still for nearly 2 months just crafting fuel. While the smart play to conserve ammo would be to head straight for Vegas and deal with Benny, I figured I may as well test out these optimized rounds, and so it was down to Prim to deal with the convicts. I'm not really sure what I expected, but I was certainly hoping for more damage considering the 3-to-1 ratio of normal to optimized fuel. I barely noticed much of a difference to be honest, so converting them may have been a waste, but I really cannot tell. For what it's worth, I don't let the low damage numbers dissuade me, I still fight my way through the convicts like I said, At the very least, I'll still get a little bit of fuel, as the leader tends to carry an incinerator. If I want to get the most damage as physically possible out of the flare gun, then I need to shoot the target in the head, hope for a critical hit, and then wait 10 seconds for the fire to burn them and do its 1 point of damage per second. Once the flame dies down, I then aim for the head again, and hopefully rinse and repeat. What this means is a lot of the combat revolves around me just shooting someone, and then either standing still and soaking up hits, or backing off and finding a place to hide while the damage over time does its thing. So yes, it is incredibly monotonous, but it is what it is. This actually reminds me a lot of my BB gun challenge from nearly 2 years ago, where the weapon does so little damage, you may as well just be doing a pacifist run with extra steps. I was determined to get some use out of it, so at the very least I want to take out both Benny and the Legate with the gun, as crazy as that second one may sound. Anyway, once the convict leader goes down, I get a whopping 4 shots worth of fuel. So no, not particularly worth the investment, but we will take it regardless. With a clear goal in mind, I fast travel back to Freeside, and for once, luck actually shined on me this day, as I was able to get just over 400 fuel from the Silver Rush when I just randomly decided to check in before confronting Benny. By the way, I am siding with House today. No real reason as to why. Off to the tops I go, and I finally get some use out of the sneak skill, for about 10 seconds before I convince Swank to let me carry my weapons anyway. The intention of persuading him wasn't to keep my weapons, but rather just for him to call off the chairman so that I don't get swarmed by suits for what I'm about to do next. Now, I could persuade Swank to send Benny up to his room and deal with him there, but as it stands, I don't have the speech required to pass the check, and going out and grinding levels with his gun sounds absolutely miserable, so I would rather just deal with him now. Obviously, I do not exactly wish to fight him when he is with his bodyguards, so I needed to lure him away. The best way I found to do this was approaching him, going through the dialogue until it's finished, and then I crouched down next to him and stole his belongings until I was caught on purpose. The reason being, he will then try to approach you to seemingly get his stuff back, even though I don't have it on me, and as such I can back up and have him follow me to somewhere where we'll be out of reach of his guards. This both did and didn't work. Like, I got far enough away that it was just the two of us, but he also initiated the fight seemingly at random once we'd walked a certain distance. Fortunately for me, Benny doesn't have a lot in the way of armor, so it won't be as much of a slog as it could have been. I just lured him over to the entrance of the casino and just circled around the plants while he very slowly died of the fire damage over time. The riot gear is honestly the best investment of the run so far, as it continues to allow me to stand and take ridiculous amounts of punishment while I wait for the fire to do its thing. After a few minutes, Benny succumbs to his wounds, I grab the chip, sit through House's little presentation, and then immediately began making my way for Cottonwood Cove without ever getting distracted a single time so that I could conserve ammo for later. Alright, so the murders weren't the only people who I dealt with here. I also went and cleared out the Brotherhood bunker as well. We all know there is no way in hell I can take them all out with this miserable excuse for a weapon, so I just steal the codes and do the things the old-fashioned way. I did stop to take out Ramos on my way out, however. That's not really saying a lot, mind you. For whatever reason, he is abnormally weak compared to the rest of them. I didn't really have any fast travel points close to the cove, so I just travelled back to Prim and followed the route you would normally take up through Nipton, and then continued to head east through Searchlight until the sky became less aggressive. I got some more use out of the gun though on the way, figured the low-level Jackal Gang members would prove as easy experience. I even managed to take out one of the convicts with a stealth kill, which is something that sounds so bizarre the more you think about it. There was also a brief run-in with some rad scorpions where I stripped down to my bare essentials so I could outpace them, all the while slowly watching them burn to death before my very eyes. It wasn't exactly worth it, but I may as well get some use out of the gun. I doubt I'll be fighting much else from this point on except the Legate himself. I made a very slight detour here to mark the Mojave outpost on the map as well, as I wanted to save whatever weapon repair kits I had left for the final fight, so Major Knight would be rather handy to have to repair my weapons. From here was just a straight shot east to Cottonwood Cove. The only creatures that posed any real threat were the feral ghouls in Camp Searchlight, but fortunately the nearby NCR were following me, seemingly trying to warn me to stay away. But in doing so, they ran straight into the ghouls' aggro range, and as such, worked as the perfect distraction for me to slip away unharmed while they fought it out. I spoke with Caesar, we have the chats, and then I'm sent down into the bunker to not do his bidding. I had a feeling the robots and turrets would just laugh in the face of my flare gun, and I was correct. Normally in situations like this I would just run past, but given my maxed out science skill, I opted for the even safer option of just hacking the nearby terminals and shutting down all of the defences. It's probably for the best too. The riot gear can cost up to 8,000 caps to repair if it gets damaged, and while I still have a boatload of money from what I sold in the Divide, I had something very particular in mind to spend it on. Once the Securitrons are activated, I double-cross Caesar by having him believe they were destroyed and get the experience for helping him regardless. Back to the Lucky 38, and because I'm an XP whore, I agree to help out Emily Ortega and bug the Lucky 38 for all of 10 seconds. After agreeing to get the aid of the boomers for House, I go to leave and she jumps me in the lobby. Somehow, she is not torn limb from limb by the security, I get my reward, and now it's off to Nellis as per usual. On the way, I stopped off at the New Vegas clinic, and this is where I spent that money that I've been hoarding like Scrooge McDuck. I purchased a subdermal armor implant for just a little bit of added protection going forward. It may not be necessary, but I had a feeling the battle with the Legate would be a war of attrition, so anything to help me outlast it and come out on top seemed like a very good idea. I don't mean to just breeze right past the boomers, but I was in and out of Nellis in about 10 minutes. Like, I helped them with all of their problems, but other than standing around and waiting for Pete to stop flapping his gums, nothing really takes all that much time. Jack did seem to be a little out of it when I brought back his love interest, but that's his problem, not mine. And because I know someone will ask, yes, I checked the boomers' munitions for more flamer ammo. In total, I got 83 more fuel, so nothing earth-shattering. Well, it was off to raise the lady from the lake, but on my way there I marked one more location on the map, getting me just enough XP to level up to 12, and allowing me to finally take the Pyromaniac perk for that extra 50% damage. Excited, I went to test it out in the nearby lake lurks, and it doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot. Granted, I have played enough Pokemon to know that I should not be attacking the water creature with fire moves. Unable to really kill them, I just retreated to the water. That may sound dumb as it's literally their house, but the thing is, they actually cannot attack you underwater. So it just results in situations like this, where we're all just chilling out together. After raising the bomber and heading to shore, they are still chasing me, so I end up having to fight them anyway. They inflict a lot of damage if they manage to land one of their range moves on me, but fortunately, they don't do that all that much. With them clumped up like this, I am able to output a decent amount of damage if I'm honest, as one shot can burn them all. Not that it mattered much in the end, as I was not the one to get the killing blow. All of this commotion attracted the attention of a nearby young Cazador, who then proceeded to single-handedly take out all of the lake lurks within seconds without breaking so much as a sweat. I, of course, cannot fast travel away while he's still alive, so I need to take it out. Luckily, Cazadors are known to have pretty bad pathing, as they cannot actually just fly over things despite their wings, so I'm able to abuse that to my advantage. I will say I was thrown for a loop when it followed me underwater and began flying after me. I don't know, I've just never seen them do that before. Even though they can do a lot of damage, Cazadors are fairly squishy, so it only takes a few flares before it's out for the count. Honestly, would much rather have fought it off than 4 lake lurks, so I'm glad things panned out this way. With the area clear, I report my success to Nellis and then House, and thanks to pissing off the Omertas, dealing with the Brotherhood, and not engaging with the NCR at all this playthrough outside of making one of them do repairs for me, I am now able to proceed to the El Dorado substation to make the final preparations before the second Battle of Hoover Dam. With a final fight before us, all that was left was one final resupply, so you know what that means. Time to spend months bonding with Eddie again. Truth be told, I only spent 20 minutes here this time, but I also made one final stop around all of the traders I met during the playthrough to get as many stim packs, drugs, and fuel as possible. When all was said and done, I had 158 shots total with the flare gun. Considering how much ammo I have used throughout the run for taking down enemies as weak as convicts, I am honestly not sure if this is enough. I ignore everyone as I make my way for the Legate's camp. The NCR fight off the Legion so they don't pose much threat, and then once you re-emerge from the dam, the Securitron reinforcements have arrived, and their missile strikes make very, very short work of anyone standing in your path. Speaking of which, it would be very easy for me to just bring the Securitron to the end fight and have it nearly one-shot the Legate with a barrage of missiles. I didn't really feel like doing this though, so I put on one of the Legion's uniforms so that they would ignore me and attack him instead. Once he was dismantled, I switched back into my riot gear and confronted the Legate. Much like the Brotherhood, I didn't see any feasible way of fighting him off along with all of his men, so I used the speech skill to have us duel one-on-one. Even with the added protection of the implant and my riot gear, there is no way I can take a lot of direct hits from the Legate, as he is just too powerful. I also cannot take off my armor to outrun him and kite him around while taking pot shots, because due to the Legate's increased height, he runs faster than the player no matter what. Taking a leaf out of my grave robber run of all things, I hopped up on some nearby crates and began shooting at him from there. This did indeed work, however, just like the grave robber run, this caused Lanius to bring out the Glock, and now we have ourselves the longest shootout in history. Both of us have great armor, and we both have absolutely terrible weapons. Sure, I have all these stim packs, but the Legate also has his healing powders, so for a long period of the fight, we were stuck in a stalemate. At one stage, I managed to pick up a nearby bucket and used it to deflect a few incoming shots, which honestly worked a hell of a lot better than I expected. Unfortunately, good things can never last, and one of his shots knocked the thing away from me. I could hop down and get it, but in doing so, he would switch to a sword, and that was a death sentence. You may be thinking, well, if you hop down, surely you can just jump back on top of the box. And yes, that is true, but if he pulls out his sword again, he will run headfirst into my box at full speed for a few seconds before switching to his sidearm. And New Vegas being New Vegas, most of the time when he does this, he will just zip on up on top of the box and murder me. After multiple deaths, it was very clear that the box wasn't going to work. I was able to find that I could climb up just high enough on these pieces of metal that he wouldn't be able to reach me and would once more be forced to switch to the 9mm. This actually proved to be the winning play. It was still just as slow and as boring as the box method, but at the very least there was no way for him to magically teleport to my position and take me out. It was down to the wire in the end. When the Legate finally went down, I had only 8 shots left and 6 Stimpaks. I used the Stimpaks to prepare for the General, and then for once actually used the flare as was intended and signalled Mr. House before it was time to wipe out the NCR. I tried to do my part, but really the Securitrons dealt with them, and I was really just there as moral support. After firing my last shot, I spoke with House, ending the game and proving yes, you can indeed beat Fallout New Vegas with only the flare gun. Yeah, don't do this. It's terrible and not worth your time. Sure, you could do it, but you could also smash your head off a brick wall. Just because you can do something does not mean you should. It would be cool if you could use the flare gun like you can in Fallout 4 and call for aid, but that is not the case, so for all intents and purposes, this is something you pick up, fire once, go, that's neat, and then put it down and never use it again. Like, I know it can be used to scare certain creatures, but wouldn't you rather just kill them? Regardless, that's going to be in this challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like, and you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe. Try to have one of these videos every week. My name is Nerbit, stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.